Florida State had a tough schedule in 2024. Just really there weren't a lot of easy games on the schedule, and that contributed to the record that they had. Don't get me wrong, this team was not very good, but with an easier schedule, with maybe some cupcake games earlier in the year, maybe they would have found a way to to get closer to a bowl game potentially. But you look at the schedule this year, and it's going to be another tough one. But they've got a couple of easy games on this schedule. So let's break it down. We'll start with the non-conference. They'll have Alabama, East Texas A&M, Kent State, and on the road at Florida. So they do have two easier games. You've got East Texas A&M, that's an FCS team. Then you've got Kent State, team out of the MAC. So you got a couple of games there, where Florida State really should not have too much trouble. Which is really not what they had last year. When you go back and look at their schedule, they had Charleston Southern. That was like that one easy game. But then, even in the non-conference, they played Memphis. Memphis turned out to be, a pretty good team. They had to play Notre Dame in the non-conference and, of course, Florida. So they only had that one game that was, an easier win. They'll have two of them this year. So there's a little bit of a positive. But still, you got Alabama and Florida in the non-conference. So that's still going to be a tough non-conference schedule. Let's take a look at who Florida State plays at home and away, specifically looking at the ACC games. They've got Miami, Pitt, Wake Forest, and Virginia Tech at home. And then on the road, they play Virginia, Stanford, Clemson, and NC State. So you look at that home schedule, Pitt, Wake Forest, potentially games Florida State could win. Virginia Tech could be a little bit tricky. We'll see. Miami, rivalry game, that one could be interesting. But I would say, they've got some chances. If this Florida State team can improve, they've got some chances to win some of those games. On the road, Virginia, Stanford, not exactly tough places to play. NC State was not good last year. Now, Clemson's going to be a really tough one. That's going to be a really good team this year. But to me, this schedule is a little bit more manageable this year. I think it works out much more in Florida State's favor than the one they had last year. So you look at the full schedule. We'll go game by game. They do open up with Alabama August 30th. It's at home, but obviously this is going to be a really tough game. Alabama's going to be one of the more talented teams in the country. It's not the old Alabama. It's not the Nick Saban Alabama, so I wouldn't say they're unbeatable. But just considering where Florida State was last year, it's hard to see them winning that game. We'll see. East Texas A&M is next, so you got an easier game there. And then an early bye week in week 3. They follow that bye week up with Kent State. So that's not an ideal spot for a bye week between two of your two easiest opponents. Again, it just didn't work out well for Florida State there. They've got Virginia on the road September 26th. That's going to be a quick turnaround. You really would have loved to have had Kent State on week 3 and then a bye week before a short week, but did not work out that way for the Seminoles. So Virginia on a short week there, September 26th on a Friday night. Then they'll be back home for Miami on October 4th. Pittsburgh at home on October 11th. Back-to-back home games there. And then you look at Stanford October 18th. On the road, they get a bye week after traveling out west to Stanford, so they'll have some recovery time there. But you look at just kind of this first part of the schedule, these first 7 games. You got East Texas A&M, you got Kent State. Those are going to be your easier wins. But then you look at, Virginia's going to be on a short week. Miami, a rivalry game. Pittsburgh, you have to play at Stanford. So this is, you can see how it could easily start out similar to last year. They've got to find a way to win some of these games against Virginia or Pitt or Stanford. Really, if you're Florida State, you really would like to get to at least 4-3 in these first 7 games. But I think that's going to be tough just the way this schedule sets up. So they get that second bye week, October 25th. Then they'll play at home against Wake Forest on November 1st. On the road at Clemson, November 8th. I would say that's probably going to be the toughest game on this schedule, more than likely. Alabama and Florida there as well. So those are the 3 games for sure. That'll be really tough. Virginia Tech on November 15th at home. And then you've got NC State, again, on a short week. So we're talking about a Friday night game on the road. It is tough to go on the road on those weeknight games. So this schedule, you look at the overall opponents, you think, the schedule is not too bad. But the way it sets up, it is not ideal for Florida State. And then they do close things out again with Florida, of course, in the rivalry game on the road this year. So, I'm looking at a lot of tricky games here. Alabama, Clemson, Florida, obviously be really tough. NC State on the road on a short week. Virginia on the road, short week. It's a schedule that the way these games set up, it does make it a lot tougher. But you look at just the opponents and you compare it to the other teams in the ACC. So Florida State's opponents for this year in the ACC, last year they were 30-34, a 47% win percentage. So this is one of the easier schedules in that aspect. But again, it's really closer to the middle of the pack there. You know, not a super easy schedule, not like Virginia Tech's, but it's obviously a much easier ACC schedule than Syracuse and Boston College. But again, you have Alabama and Florida in the non-conference. So I would say overall, you know, pretty tough schedule for Florida State